All right, this is officially being recorded, so you're on camera. We do have closed captioning tonight. If it's distracting for you, you can turn it off. So you can go down to the bottom of your screen and you'll see a little CC icon. If you click that, you do have the option to turn it off. Also, Peter Whitney is here. He's our senior field organizer. He is the techie tonight. So if you do have any technical issues, basic technical issues, then please use the chat to just say, hey, Peter, I'm having an issue with X, Y, or Z, and he will try to help you. Also, you'll see that there is a chat and a Q&A option. We're gonna just try to use the Q&A for questions later on when we're having the panel discussion. So if you can reserve the chat for comments, and if you want to say anything to the other to the panelists or other attendees, that's fine. But we are going to have an open question and answer session later, so if you can use the Q&A for that time. So now I'm going to hand it over to Benjamin Cox, the Executive Director of Friends, to give a little introduction.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm Benjamin Cox, Executive Director of Friends of the Forest Preserves. We unite people to protect, promote, and care for the forest preserves in Cook County. And really, our goal is to reconnect people with nature and help them be excited about it and love it, and really to know that, this nature here in Cook County is actually very special. Most of us think that you have to go somewhere far away to enjoy nature, Wisconsin or Michigan or Colorado or Alaska, somewhere else. And as it turns out, we have some really, really special nature right here in Cook County. Down here at the tip of the southern tip here of Lake Michigan, numerous ecosystems come together to really afford us an unbelievable number of species. So what we don't have in grand vistas and giant mountains, we have in numbers. We have extensive amounts of species here in Cook County. Prairies are some of the most diverse places on the planet. And we have, crazy things like cactus and legless lizards and things that people just wouldn't expect, orchids and river otters. It's a wonderful thing. And it's all here for people to enjoy. I like to think that, if someone wants to help us do the work on this, we'd really love to have one of our community members help us figure this out. But it seems to me that this might be the most amount of nature in the face of the most number of people, so the most accessible to people of anywhere in the country. 70,000 acres. It's nearly, if it was on the list of the 63 now national parks, there was a new one added just recently, like last week or the week before, actually. But of the 63 national parks, this would be in the 40s size-wise. So there's a whole bunch of national parks that are actually smaller. Just the Palos Preserve itself is 15,000 acres. That's the same size as the Indiana Dunes National Park, which was upgraded from a national lakeshore to national park in 2019. Just to give you an idea of how wonderful the forest preserves are here. So Alana, should we look at the land acknowledgement? We've come up with a new land acknowledgement statement. And it's long. So I'm going to read the first part and talk about the last part and invite you to read the rest of it on our website. We're still sorting out how to use it correctly. So if anybody out there has knowledge on that, please reach out and help us out. This Friends is all about our members and our volunteers and our board members and our staff. We're all one big community getting things done. So Friends of the Forest Preserves acknowledges that the forest preserves in Cook County are located on the ancestral homelands of the Council of Three Fires, a long-standing Anishinaabe alliance of the Ojibwe or Chippewa. Pausing, my internet was bad for a second. Ottawa or Ottawa, there's a couple spellings there, and Potawatomi North American Native tribes. These lands have also been home and a place for trade for many other tribes, including the Fox, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Meskwaki, Miami, and Sauk people. For centuries, these folks cared for these lands until the lands were largely stolen from them by colonizers. And today we employ certain land management techniques that follow indigenous practices that were practiced here for thousands of years. So and I'll leave the rest for us to read online, but one of the things that is really important about a land acknowledgement is you don't just say thank you and acknowledge that, you know, what has happened with the land, but that you work hard to suggest ways that we can make a difference, that we can do something about, you know, how to improve on what has been changed and what didn't go very well in my mind, from my point of view. So there at the bottom, you can see an intentional, you know, our community is committed to the intentional inclusion of Native Americans and their voices in our community and our work. We invite you to support partner organizations that provide education and engagement opportunities, honoring Native American heritage and modern culture. We advocate for the sound integration of sustainable use and management of the preserves by Native American community members. And we hope to emulate what was done here for many generations before us. And we ask you to offer gratitude and respect and support the many Native American people, including their ancestors, who consider the lands and waters within Cook County sacred, and help us in taking care of this land too, so that it's here for us and future generations to enjoy. The last thing I'll say about the land acknowledgement is, if you weren't aware, that Cook County is home to one of the largest populations, maybe the largest indigenous population, urban indigenous population in the United States. So thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you.
So I'm going to take over from here and just go over really quickly, why do we hold an annual photo contest? This is something that we've had for now 13 years, and it's hugely popular and hugely fun, but it does have some higher purposes. We aim to educate, inspire, and engage. And so I'm going to go over each of those a little bit more. Through this contest, we hope to educate, inspire, and engage the Friends community and beyond. These photographs help to share the important work our community is doing to protect wildlife and restore wildlife habitat. Observation is one of the best ways to appreciate nature, and we believe that photography is an extension of observation, bringing the natural world from one set of eyes to countless others. We hope these stunning images encourage more people to come out and discover for themselves all that the forest preserves have to offer. And finally, we hope the photos from these contests lead people to action, to become volunteers, advocates, or maybe even members of Friends, joining a movement of thousands who are protecting, promoting, and caring for our local forest preserves. So without further ado, we are going to launch into a slideshow of the 11th annual photo contest winners. So we have, of course, our panelists are some of the winners of these photos. And this is the first time they're seeing the slideshow as well. So I hope everyone enjoys. There is music accompaniment. So just gonna set that up and then we'll get started.
Sunshine on my shoulders makes me happy. Sunshine in my eyes can make me cry. Sunshine on the water looks so lovely. Sunshine almost always makes me high. If I had a day that I could give you, I'd give to you a day just like today. If I had a song that I could sing for you, I'd sing a song to make you feel this way. Sunshine on my shoulders makes me happy. Sunshine in my eyes can make me cry. Sunshine on the water looks so lovely. Sunshine almost always makes me high. If I had a tale that I could tell you,
All right, thanks for bearing with me during that transition. So those were the stunning photos that won in 2019. And I just want to say that we usually have this event in person, and we have Franklin Framing, a lovely framing shop owned by Greg Latrow in Blue Island. He usually hosts us, and we have drinks and food, and it's just a really nice gathering. And since we weren't able to do that in 2020, this is coming a little bit late, but I'm so excited that we are able to do this and celebrate these amazing photos, because they really are beautiful. So what I wanted to do is open up the discussion and ask our photographers some questions. I find it very valuable to find out the behind the scenes of a picture, a photo, a painting, any piece of art. Just gives you a better appreciation when you know a little bit about what the circumstances were in which it was made. So I'd like to start with a first question to all of the panelists. If you can tell us, how did your photo come to be? And just please take us back to that moment and share the details of what was happening. So let me know who wants to start, and don't forget to unmute yourself. You know what, I'm going to call him Patrick, because he's got his daughter Addie with him, who's in the photo. And this is a great story. So why don't we start off with you, Patrick?
Okay. Yeah, so this is Addie, my daughter. And actually, so the photo was taken on a Sunday morning in the summertime, pre-pandemic, obviously. And it was just a group of it was friends and family out at McCormick Woods along First Avenue by Brookfield Zoo. And a friend of ours is kind of introducing, our circle to nature photography as a hobby. And I was really struggling with some macro shots that morning. And I say that like, I know what I'm talking about, but I really was then and still now just like a total novice. So what I did is I just put on my like standard lens and I just started taking photos of my companions. And I got a couple that I really liked that day, and they were all of people. And I got this one, which I entered into the contest, which is of Addie. And she may have some things to say about it. There are three things that I like about it. Do you want to talk first, or do you want me to? Okay. So there's three things I like about it. And Addie is a very artistic person, and this kind of captures her in her element. I really like, she has a Hogwarts shirt on, which I think kind of timestamps the photo. So like years from now, like long after I'm gone, people looking at this photo will have some idea of, how old she was in this moment. And the third thing I like about it is the cardinal flowers, obviously in the background. We had never seen cardinal flowers before, and we were really enamored with them. They were like these kind of like red bottle rockets shooting out of the green foliage, and they kind of like photobomb Addie in this picture. So that's my story, and that's why I like the photo.
Do you want to add anything, Addie?
Just that I really like taking photos, and I really like being at McCormick Woods. It's just a beautiful place.
Thank you for sharing. All right, I'm going to flip through the pictures, and whichever one comes up is the next person. All right. Janet, do you want to speak to this photo? I think she might be having some technical issues. Maybe Peter can help her.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm actually a dragonfly monitor. I started out in a couple of the Lake County preserves and ran into some people who have since become friends. They're other nature enthusiasts. When I was walking at Deer Grove, and they said, we need someone to monitor dragonflies here. So I volunteered, and that's not through the Forest Preserves, it's through the Illinois Odonate Monitoring Survey, or Illinois Odonate Survey. Anyway, so I love dragonflies. They're very beautiful, and they're very approachable, and they're also beneficial insects. They do absolutely nothing that is damaging to people, and they, in fact, eat a whole lot of mosquitoes, so they are our friends. But anyway, since I've gotten into dragonflies, I now find myself noticing a lot of other insects, and another insect that appears in the woods around the same time the dragonflies do, and is similar in size from a standpoint of photographing them, are the butterflies. So then I got interested in butterflies and started capturing and collecting butterfly photos. And this one just looked really bright, and I believe I took it in August, and those are sort of the colors of August in a way. And I knew it was a sulfur butterfly, which is one of the families of butterflies, and I just didn't know what kind it was, and it turns out it's called a sleepy orange. And butterflies and dragonflies both have a lot of very fun common names. And the only other time I had seen this before was in Texas, so it was just a pretty creature, and I submitted other photos as well. Birds are really still my true first love, but I find myself equally drawn to dragonflies, butterflies, and actually other insects as well. So I went ahead and submitted it.
Thank you. Let's talk to Caitlin.
So I used to go for walks in Catherine Chevalier Woods all the time after work and on weekends and stuff, just to practice photography because there's like so many deer there. So I would just practice wildlife photography on them. And on one of my walks, I was walking along the path and I came across this raccoon. And it was, you know, a little bit ways off the path. And it looked like it was eating something. I'm not really sure what it was eating. It may have been eating food that was left out there by people because I've seen that happen in the forest preserves there before, which is not really a good thing. I know that sometimes people think that animals, like, they need our help, or, you know, you care about the animals, so you want to feed them, but it can be bad for them because sometimes they're fed things that aren't good for them. And if they're, you know, fed from cars, that can attract them to the roadsides and they could be hit and killed. Or if they get too used to people, they can become aggressive if they're searching out food from people. And in the worst case scenario, like in national parks, this can cause them to be euthanized. And that actually just happened a couple weeks ago with a red fox in Grand Teton National Park. So, you know, that's a really important thing to keep in mind when you're out in nature, is just don't feed the animals, just let them be wild animals. So that's just something I wanted to share about that photo. But in terms of like the technical, you know, I just got down real low and tried to get on the same eye level as the raccoon. And I liked how I got, you know, the springtime flowers in the foreground and kind of like framed its face. And yeah, it's got like the eye contact and everything. So, and raccoons are one of my favorite animals. So it was really nice to be able to get that picture of it.
Thanks, Caitlin. Yeah, this is such a good example of why it's so great to know about the background of these photos. And they're such a great educational tool and really interesting, beautiful photo. So next we have, well, Julio was not able to join us, so we're going to skip that. And then we have Michelle, if she can talk about Vogue.
All right, so this was taken on a winter day, and winter is an extremely fun time to be in the forest because when it's snowing or right after a fresh snow, you notice that quiet stillness that comes up, and you almost want to match that environment because you don't want to make any noises or anything like that. And so it really helps you just sit and focus on everything around you, and that's when you can start noticing all the details. So I absolutely love that time of year, especially, like I said, especially when it's snowing. And that was happening here when I took this photo at Deer Grove. And, you know, everything is quiet, nothing's moving around. You just see the snowflakes coming down. And then there's this squirrel that comes in and he's super busy. And you're just wondering, like, well, what is this commotion about? And it seems so obnoxious almost just because everything else is quiet and asleep. But then, so I was just watching him because your focus goes directly to him since everything else is quiet. And one of the fun parts about photography is trying to predict what's going to happen. So you start almost storytelling in your head before the story actually comes in. So you're kind of predicting where is this going to go. And so I was sitting there waiting for him to look at me because we kept making eye contact back and forth. So I was just watching him, trying to figure out what he was doing, what he was thinking. And eventually we stared at each other and he was probably wondering what I was doing.
I love these stories. This is the first time I'm hearing most of these stories, and they're so great. So next we have David.
First of all, I want to thank the jurist, Ilana, for including my picture in the grouping. It's not very typical of what you would think of from what you see in the forest preserves, but it's an example of what I believe art and photography does. It enhances or expands our vision. So many things are in front of us, and if we learn to as Michelle said, just be quiet and look, and all of a sudden things that were in front of you, you thought were invisible, become present. So this photo was taken at the Chicago Botanic Garden. And if people are familiar with the Japanese garden, the island with the Japanese gardens, there's a bridge that takes you from the main garden to this island. So I was walking over the bridge, people are walking by and looking down in the water, and then all of a sudden the water came into focus, and this was December. So there was frozen ice and it was kind of broken up. So it became very much a natural fractal abstract. And I took this with a phone, and the only thing I did, I don't use Photoshop much, but I enhanced the contrast. So this was taken at the Botanic Gardens looking over the bridge to the Japanese island during December.
Nice.
Thank you. Michelle, you have another one.
So this one is a gorgeous fall day, and I don't know if a lot of you have been to River Trail. If you haven't, you absolutely should, because the trees there are just stunning, and the paths that go through it are winding, and you really get to see a beautiful landscape going through. And most people that know me, that have gone to the forest with me, hate walking with me, because I will stop and stare at probably the smallest details that are there, and it takes me forever to just get through a little portion of the path. But when you do that, you come across awesome moments that come through. And quite honestly, this man's outfit was what really caught my attention, because immediately I'm thinking Indiana Jones, some kind of adventure story here. And I'm, once again, going back to storytelling, photography is a lot about storytelling. I'm wondering what their story is, and his whole just persona and the way that they were just strolling along. I just was captured by that moment, and especially they look so small within this photo just because of how towering the trees are, but they had such a presence as well. And I think when you are in the forest, it's kind of a neat moment, because you, as almost insignificant as you are to everything, you are still connected in some kind of way, and it's an awesome relationship that people have when they are in the preserves or when they are out in nature. And I think this is the kind of moment that embodied that for me.
Thank you. Ken, can you talk about Sedge Meadow?
Okay, yes, thank you. I took this photo in, I think 2017, and it was in the middle of January, very early in the morning. The sun was just coming up. And it's one of those areas, it's very remote, and you can't get out here in the summer because it's all watery marsh. And it's the remoteness, the isolation, sort of that early dawn sort of period of time that gives it this character. And I did turn down the color saturation a little bit just to reinforce that feeling of isolation. But the other thing that I really liked about it was this the pattern that the sedge grass made as it sort of fell over. It was almost like these balls of human hair just kind of laid out in this vast landscape. It's really something I've never seen before, never seen anywhere else but here. And so really taking this photo and sharing it is a part of documentation and showing everybody what's out there.
Thank you. I'm just going to take 1 minute to say the chat is so wonderful. There's so much encouraging and wonderful comments. So please continue to chat and share your thoughts. If you do have any questions, though, please use the Q&A function, and we'll take those questions later in this discussion. So yeah, keep on chatting. All right, Gary, talk about Eyes and Claw.
Good evening, all. Eisenclaw, I took at Rolling Knolls. I'm lucky enough to live about a stone's throw away from Rolling Knolls. Rolling Knolls started as a farm. Then they developed a golf course on the site. Back in 1962, a 9-hole golf course. In the late 80s, they squeezed in 9 more holes to make it 18-hole golf course. 2010 is when the Cook County Forest Preserve acquired the land and developed it into a forest preserve known as Rolling Knolls. And Rolling Knolls, I'm assuming, got its name from the glacier hills, the hilly area. They're also known as cames. And what they have is they have some old golf cart tracks, paths that run north and south along what used to be the fairways. So they've now made it into a disc golf course with an 18-hole that gets used pretty well. And one day, it was in June in 2019, I was walking down one of these golf cart paths, just wanting to see what I could see. And here he was, I'm assuming it's a he, could be a she, but he was just sitting there enjoying the sun, and he was on one of these cart paths. So he was getting the heat off the asphalt. And he sat there, he looked at me, I looked at him. He was nice enough to pose for me. I got down low like Caitlin did, but I tried to stay away because I know how fast and how far they can reach out with that head. And I didn't want to get that close to him. But he stood there for a few minutes looking at me and took some pictures. And then he decided it was time to go. And he walked off the asphalt, and I'm assuming going back down to the pond that's on the south side of Rolling Knolls. So I figured by his size, he had to be somewhere between 15 to 20 years old. So he's been around that area for a long time. And that's how that picture came about.
Thank you. Fidencio, if you could talk about Painted Lady on Ironweed. Fidencio, you're muted.
Still,
There we
I'm
go.
good now, I think.
Yes.
Okay, thanks everyone. Yeah, I've been a restoration volunteer out at McCormick Woods for about 4 or 5 years. So I was just hanging out there with Bill Marsalak, the steward, just looking for things to photograph. And we ran across this really nice stand of ironweed. I found over the last couple of years of photographing nature that it's probably best just to stake out a really good spot. You just wait for something to come along. And so I just kind of knelt there in front of this ironweed. Like Gary and Caitlin had mentioned, you kind of want to have a low perspective, try and get to the level of the object you're shooting. Then this painted lady came along, and it was so busy eating, I was able to get so close to it with my macro lens. It was pretty amazing. I was there shooting it for about 5 minutes, just as it prowled along the ironweed, and it just ignored me. And that in and of itself was pretty cool, just getting so close to something so beautiful. But yeah, like I think Benjamin Cox had mentioned earlier, there's so many special places in the forest preserves, and you just gotta kind of stop and look around, and you're bound to find something. So.
Thank you. I think we might be done with the panel. Yeah, Julio again was not able to join us, and neither was John. So I'm going to open this up to another question. I'd like to know what inspires you about nature photography, and how is it different, or how does it make you feel different from other types of photography? So anyone is welcome to start. Just raise your finger and I'll call on you. Yeah, Michelle, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, I think with nature photography, it's the closest that you can get to magic in the world. And I think it's great to live with a little bit of whimsy in your life. And that's kind of something that I absolutely live for. And I feel closest to that in nature. And when you're stopping and watching everything, you can see these awesome details that make up the landscape, and that's, I think, the coolest part of it. So it's not just, oh, here's some trees, here's some hills, here's a river going through. You start really looking at all the little possible details that make that beautiful scene. So you see the branches, you see the pebbles, you see the sprouts and everything else with that. And what's cool about it is that all of that is able to exist and have this like effect on you without a human touch. And so obviously building and architecture can have details as well. And you can have beautiful places. You can have, people are interesting, and still lifes are interesting, but they're crafted in some kind of way. And even if you have forest preserves or you have naturescapes that have a human touch kind of tending to it, it's still able to thrive without the human touch. So I think that's where the magic starts coming in, and the power that it has to create all these different effects, because it could be calming, it could be crazy, it could be powerful, it could be delicate, it could be simple, it could be super detailed. And I think that's the true inspiration. So you get to feel something a little bit special in this world when you're out in nature.
David?
I would say for me, nature photography, what's different, it's because nature is fragile. People will be around and buildings will be around and change, but as the statement said, land and nature and the living animals that are not domesticated, natural things that occur in nature, those are need to be preserved. They're sacred, and there's no guarantee that they'll be there forever. So the fact that you can go someplace so close to a city and really immerse yourself, whether it's plants or vistas or insects or animals, that's why what I cherish nature photography.
Lana?
Yeah.
Another thought is, and it's very true, especially here in our position in the Northern Hemisphere, is the change of the seasons. I love the way things change. I get out at all times of the year and visit a lot of favorite places. I'm guessing we all have certain favorite places that we go back to again and again. And just watching how they evolve, they keep evolving through the seasons. And in addition to that, not even just with regard to change of seasons, but how much there, I think one of the other panelists mentioned just, the immensity. There's so much to see. And I'll find, especially when I'm doing something like insect photography, I'm crouched down, got my lens, and quite often, whatever it is that I wanted to capture flies away. I'm right moving and getting focused, and then it flies away. And I'll think, oh, darn, and I'll sort of start to lift myself up, but I'll turn just a couple of degrees, and here's something else to photograph. There's a new thing that I can capture. It just seems infinite. I mean, there's just, it's like a smorgasbord of things to immerse yourself in.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point that for every photo that's captured, there's probably dozens that have been missed or got bungled in some way. So that's interesting. Who would like to go next? Yeah, Gary.
What inspires me is I try to capture the wonder of the preserves in my photos, the awe, the mystery, the serenity, and the joy of nature. I'm also drawn to the preserves because instead of like urban, is because besides the wildlife all around, there's no two landscapes, sunsets, sunrises are ever the same. There's always a different light, different conditions, different seasons. So it's, boundless and endless.
Yeah, I'm going to add, based on what Gary was saying, I'd like to know from the panelists, again, what inspires you about nature photography, but we can get a little bit more specific and maybe also talk about why you love photographing in the forest preserves in Cook County. So what aspects of the forest preserves are you particularly drawn to? So you can kind of answer either or both questions. And if, yeah, Fidencio?
Yeah, thanks. The thing I really like about the forest preserves is, in photographing it, it really forces you to slow down. Everyone's always trying to do so much, and even if you're just hiking in the forest preserves, you're trying to get through it, putting in your miles, what have you. But with a camera, you kind of want to stop, you know, and look around you. And I think a couple of other panelists have mentioned that too, where it just kind of forces you to see things in a different light. You can relax, you can stop, you can take your time, and stop hurrying. And to me, that's one of the greatest attractions of being in the forest preserves with a camera, is that you can slow down and you have a good excuse for stopping and looking at things in much more detail than you ever would, like without a camera. You know, the camera kind of forces you to stop and look closer. So.
Yeah, really good point. Someone want to follow up? Yeah, Michelle.
Well, and I think with that, I think conservation is such an important thing that a lot of people have to focus on, and obviously everyone has their different area of focus in this world that needs some kind of attention to it. But I think with nature photography, those of us that can see the details, see those cool little interesting aspects that other people might miss, when you take a picture of it, you're allowing someone else to finally see that, and hopefully that inspires them to want to either go out there or to take care of what's around them too. So, you know, through photography, you're not only experiencing it for yourself, but then you're hoping to share some kind of, or to invoke some kind of feelings into people so that they want to take care of it too, and that they want to enjoy it. And I think the more people that find a love to it or find something within it that connects to them, the more that they you know, will put in some kind of effort to take care of it.
Great.
Absolutely. That speaks just right to the heart of why we do the photo contest. Caitlin, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, for me, nature photography has always been like a great stress reliever, especially living, you know, in Chicago, in like a big city that's crowded and there's people all the time, and it's just nice to be able to go walk among a bunch of trees and, you know, just relax and listen to the breeze rustling through the leaves. That's always one of my favorite things. I used to work in Skokie, and I would always drive over to Bunker Hill on my lunch break and just sit there and like listen to the wind and the trees and stuff. And yeah, it's always very relaxing to just get out in nature. And in terms of the preserves in particular, I actually live in Colorado now. So I actually miss the forest preserves, even though there's like so much great nature out here in Colorado and like big mountains and stuff like that. The forest preserves in Chicago, they're different. They're unique to that area. Like, we don't have the same kind of trees out here. We don't get like gorgeous red and orange maple trees in the fall and all that kind of stuff. So there's definitely beautiful nature around Chicago, and, you know, the whole Midwest area. It's just a different kind. So
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Caitlin. That photography can almost be a selfish act, that it can be really relaxing, and it's not always just about sharing those photos, but and sharing those stories is hugely important, but it's really fun and really relaxing, and you can just do it you know, for yourself. Does anyone want to jump in with some more thoughts? Benjamin?
I also have some Q&A questions if we want to do those now, or if we, you know, add a few now, or if we want to save them all to the end.
Sure, if they're coming in, let's start some Q&A. And then if any of the panelists want to answer any of the questions that they haven't answered, feel free to jump in with those answers as well.
So we have about 4 questions that are all, and maybe 5 that are all related to equipment. Folks are asking, what do you use? What do you suggest for nature photography? And one question was a little more specific from our current board member and former board chair, Steve Schlegel, is asking how many of these images were taken on phone cameras and how many were with SLRs or other equipment. So if any panelist wants to just mention what, equipment they use and what they might suggest.
Yeah, Michelle, you want to start us off?
So I use a Nikon D3300. So it's a SLR, but it's not the fanciest ever. And I bought it, I've had it now for a few years actually, and it's still working fine. I think if you're just getting into it, you'll find out that lenses are super expensive. The kit itself, you're putting in a little bit of money into it, but it's reasonable. But you can start off with the basic cameras, or more of a basic SLR, and then you can start getting lenses onto those. So you can kind of invest more in the lenses, which will help you get nicer quality photos, I guess. But I use DSLRs for mine.
Patrick?
We use there's 3 different Nikons we have. My wife has like a D7200 and several different lenses. I have a D5600. These are all crop sensor cameras. They're not like full frame cameras or anything. And then the D3500, which is like a newer, it's like Nikon's kind of, I think it's like an entry level camera, but it's like a really nice camera. You can do a lot with it. It's relatively inexpensive too. So, but that's it.
I use a Canon 5D Mark III and I love it. I started out with a used Canon Rebel, bottom of the line entry level camera, and I got some good shots out of that too. So you don't necessarily need to spend a whole lot of money, I don't think. And I've been impressed to see some of the things that people do with cell phones. Their cell phone cameras seem to be getting better and better, but I still like my DSLR the best because it's because of you can change lenses and because of all the different controls that can aid you in shooting. But my son, who really got me into this and who is very camera savvy, just has moved on to the latest and greatest, which I can't even remember. I think it's a mirrorless camera. It takes 500 shots a minute or something like that. Amazing. So you can go crazy with cameras. And I think I'd say start out with something, if you don't know whether you're going to like photography, maybe start out with a used camera or an inexpensive camera and see how well you like it. And then if you want to expand your kit, you're free to do so.
Yeah, Michelle?
Just going along with that. So this is actually coming from a photography teacher that I had, but he always said that obviously the camera will allow you to take better quality sometimes, quality in terms of the actual photo itself. And especially with if you get better lenses and whatnot, but it's more so in the eye of the person. So practicing fundamentals of photography and things like that are what really are going to get you a nice photo, no matter what equipment you have. So even if you just have a phone, start off with that. That's how I started off, quite honestly, years ago. And I would just take pictures with my phone. And then once you start taking those classes, go to YouTube. YouTube has amazing videos and resources on there for you to learn. Then you can start learning basics like rule of thirds and things like that, which will all lead to better photos. So once you get that kind of under the belt, getting a better camera and growing in that way will really get you nice photos.
That's such a good point. Yeah, that getting a nice camera is not going to get you the best pictures, but learning the fundamentals and patience and maybe some passion will get you some stunning photos. David, you want to go?
Yes, I definitely agree with what the last thing Michelle said is when I started a job one time, I put a picture on my desk and the person I shared the cube with said, "Oh, what camera do you have? What do you have a great," so it was like an insult to the photographer because it was all about the camera. And to me, it's be an artist first and develop your composition. I have a good friend who takes beautiful pictures. Every time I see her photos, I keep thinking she's got a new camera. And she just says right now for her budget, she has a entry level. It doesn't have an interchangeable lenses, but it has a zoom, a pretty powerful zoom. So I think my thought is if you don't be concerned about if your budget is something to be a concern and however you want to start, get something with a zoom and, you know, basic camera, start taking pictures. And another point Michelle made is it might be as important to take at a community college composition because that will help a lot. Not everybody has an eye. And then you can also get into the different like lighting. So I say take pictures first and then get the equipment. The other thing with cell phones, I take the picture I took with the cell phone. What's nice about that is the quality of the lenses, and they have, I think, a wider angle. So you get a nice panorama, you get a nice broad picture that you may not get with more of a standard 35 millimeter.
So there's some questions about location and where photos were taken and where specific preserves are. I would highly suggest that folks go to the Forest Preserve website, and it says places to go right at the top. So it's fpdcc.com, and they've got a great interactive map where you can find sites. If you want more specific advice or have specific questions about a site, feel free to reach out to any of the Friends staff, especially Radhika Moralia, our program director, or myself or Alana, and we can help get you some more insider information. And we're also working to put some more of that up on our website. But again, the Forest Preserves have really expanded their offerings as far as maps, and they also have a lot of details about specific preserves and stories, and they've been writing those and updating them. Earlier, Kathy Garrity, who's a longtime Forest Preserve staff superhero, one of the ones is just it's been a great administration for a while. There were some challenges in the past. Kathy's been all the way through. Asked about purchasing photographs. We talked a lot about that as Friends staff, and we decided the easiest thing to do is for us to connect you with the photographers. So if you'd like a photo, you can see them all on our website under the photo contest section, and we can connect you with that specific photographer. We won't play middleman, or whether or not we would ever do a calendar. And well, there we go, there's my internet. Oh, wait. The Forest Preserves has a calendar. We probably will not do a calendar. We love these photos, and they really help us in our work, both on the website and our newsletters and other promotional pieces. But for now, we're holding off on doing a calendar. There's a couple questions about, when is black and white more important, or when does that make sense? And there's also a question here. We'll do a twofer. You can take one or the other. How long have each one of you been taking nature photos?
I'm going to interject and just see if Ken or David want to talk about that black and white question, because I think that's a really fascinating question. That what are the instances when you think black and white photography is more appropriate or more suited to an image of nature?
Okay, I'd like Ken, do you want to answer yours first? Mine was, I think yours really emphasized the black and white.
Well, I just wanted to say that I find on some days I'm totally in the mood for black and white, and other days I have no interest. So it's I don't know that I could put a rule to it, but I will say that sometimes I will go back and just because of my mood, I'll take a picture that I think looks great in color. And I'll just start fooling around with, well, Lightroom is a program I use, but I will turn down the saturation and suddenly the photo takes on a whole new quality. Sometimes something you never even thought it could. So that's how I've discovered black and white. It's more by accident than by calculation.
What I would say is a lot of times I think it has to do with the lighting, is if you see dramatic lighting and shadows, so it could be whether there's the term about the golden hours, like in the, you know, in the morning around sunrise and sunset, then you can develop your eye to kind of turn the color into shades of black, white, and gray. So that would be, I think that would, you know, if you're at a beautiful pond or a lake and the, you know, the trees, it seems like the color is more important. But if in the evening, if you look on the ground, you see shadows, you see, and depending on how bright the light is, there's sharper definition between the different shapes that come out in the black, white, and grays.
And sometimes black and white, I think, emphasizes the overall composition. You tend to see more of the image, whereas sometimes color focuses you in, draws you into a particular object. But again, it's not a rule. It's every photo can be different that way.
So to build on those questions, there's two here. One is from Eduardo de la Peña, and I'm not saying everyone's names that are asking, but I wanted to call him out because he's calling from Northeast Mexico. Our reach is far this evening. He's asking, do you have any, you know, what advice you might have to give to a young amateur photographer? And someone else also asked, you know, what basic advice do you have about composition? You know, so sort of the basics of composition. Jimmy was that person's name.
Yeah, Michelle, you want to tackle that?
For basic advice, just go out and shoot. Like that's the best thing you can do. Honestly, no matter what camera you have, just keep taking photos, tons and tons of photos. What's awesome, and I come from a generation where I didn't have to develop my photos, so I didn't have to pay to go to Walgreens or wherever to get them all developed. So you can literally take as many pictures as you want. You can take as many bad pictures as come out, and you can just delete them. So the more you practice that way, the more you'll open your eye to seeing certain things. And I know in the chat there were some questions that came up about like where you learn certain skills. YouTube, like I said earlier, YouTube's awesome. And in terms of what YouTubers, I know someone asked, try to figure out like what you're trying to focus on, and whether it be composition or anything like any of those basics, you can just search for that. And there are so many different resources that pop up right away. So a lot of practice, a lot of just going out there and just taking pictures of anything and everything, and then do your research. Just watch videos about it, and watch either if you're really into photography, go to Instagram or some other kind of photo community, and that's where you start seeing a lot of inspiration too. I think seeing other people and what they do inspires your own work. I know it's done that for me.
Yeah, Patrick?
I think like if you're just getting started, a great way to start is with nature, because it's kind of indifferent to you. There are no expectations. There's no judgment. You don't have to really perform. It's just kind of, neutral territory. You can do whatever you want.
So the trees won't get mad at you if the pictures of them look bad, huh?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
You'll get mad at the wind a lot though. That you'll get mad at a lot.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting discussion about the elements. So, we get photos from that are clearly taken during snowstorms and rainstorms, and I don't know how much wind we see in those pictures, but I'm sure, like you're saying, Michelle, there's wind in the background. You know, any tips on how to deal with the elements when you want to go out and photograph?
Choose foggy days. Go ahead, Ken.
Sorry, I was just going to say, we're out quite a bit all year round with the Spring Creek Stewards, and I don't want to scare anybody off for going out in the cold. I would say when it's really cold, that's when you have some of your greatest photographing opportunities. You know, the ice photo that David had, a beautiful photograph, and you know, you don't get those things if it's not cold out. And I've been out when it's 20 below, and what you find many times, it's actually not windy. And if you're in a forest setting, it's usually very calm. So the real challenge then becomes dressing for it, you know, dress in layers. And, you know, the clothing today is really good. When I was a kid, I froze to death all the time. But if you get some decent long underwear, some nice pullovers, a scarf, a good hat, some gloves, you can stay out for quite a long time. Usually the challenge is the battery in your camera freezing and losing power, but get hand warmers, get those foot warmers you put in your boots, and you can be out for several hours. No problem, especially if you're hiking and moving.
Well, and then you start getting lost in it too, where you completely forget. Once you're like so
Exactly.
involved, you forget that you're outside, and then you realize a little bit later, oh, I haven't eaten in 8 hours.
Right.
Oh, I'm freezing. And then also don't go like on really sunny days, don't go at high noon. I think that's a basic tip too. Whenever the sun is super hot during the day. So if you're really trying to get nice quality exposure on it early in the morning or closer to sunset, I think David was the one that mentioned golden hour. That's like a great time to go. And you'll see that the sun actually lights up everything and it just looks like it's on fire. So it's absolutely beautiful during those times. And that's when you notice the light on everything. Foggy days are also fantastic, or when it's overcast, that's a perfect time to go out.
So how often do you all go out? How many, you know, and then how long, you know, the question's sort of, yeah, how often are you out in the preserves, and then, you know, like how many times a week, how many hours a day, that sort of thing.
Depends
So
if
you
you're
have your camera with you at all times, that's all. It's
Yeah, we're always going out,
and then
right?
with phones, cameras being so good, that's another good way, easy way to learn, because you have it right with you and you see immediately, you know, if what you captured is what you tried to capture. I try to at least go to the forest preserves about 4 times a week. I would, you know, what if you're active, you know, riding a bike or running, then I don't have a camera, but otherwise, you know, just take your camera with you whenever you can.
when work is not involved, then you can go out there. Work comes in the way of a lot, but weekends definitely, and especially during the summertime. I'm a teacher, so I have that ability to go out during the summers a lot and spend the time outside.
I'm going to ask real quick, Peter, are you getting any questions from Facebook or the outside world?
No questions yet from Facebook.
Okay.
Lots of appreciative views and likes coming in.
I had one other thought. Don't always take your camera, because I went to Yellowstone and at Old Faithful, and I took pictures of everybody filming Old Faithful. Nobody was looking at it. So, you know, it's just pick the time when you want to take a pictures, but also don't forget to just look.
David, that is really good advice. It really is. Sometimes you forget to not look with your own eyes. And you get so busy doing, you're not enjoying. Not that taking pictures isn't also enjoyable, but.
Any other questions? If you've got questions, go ahead and enter them into the Q&A box. Are there any other and unanswered questions from the panelists? I know some of you had your fingers raised at one point or another, and I wasn't able to call on you. So if you have an answer that you'd like to share from a previous question, please go ahead. Yeah, Gary?
I agree with, excuse me, everything everyone has had to say about getting out there and shooting. That's the main thing. I spent a number of years just shooting with Canon point and shoot cameras that they have the zoom. That I didn't have to change the lens, but it was the composition, what I was taking. And that's what interests me most, besides just what camera was I using. As they said, it isn't the camera that makes a picture, it's the person behind the camera. So the more you get out there, the more you shoot, you'll find out. And as Michelle said, YouTube is a great place. You just type in what type of photography you're looking for. And there are many, many great ideas. Every day I get ideas on something I might want to do in photography. So you don't have to spend a lot of money to get started. And then if you find you like it a lot, that's when you get into getting cameras that have a lens. Right now I use an old Rebel T3i, and I have a couple different lenses I use. It's good for macro, or it's good for, landscapes, sunsets. So just get out there and shoot. And the last thing is, when you're out walking, every once in a while, turn around and look behind you and see what might be, or how something might look. One day I was at Carl Hansen Woods, and I was taking some pictures of Black-Eyed Susan. And I turned around, and about 15 feet behind me, a doe was standing there watching me take pictures. Of course, as soon as I turned around with the camera, she took off. But like I said, every once in a while, just turn around and see what you're walking, what you might miss.
Okay.
Ilana, I'd like
Yeah,
to.
Janet?
Questions here that we can kind of combine a little bit.
Oh,
maybe
Benjamin,
option.
if we can let Janet.
Oh, go ahead, Janet.
I just wanted to make one comment. This isn't about photography, but we've all just been through a really tough year of quarantine. And I have to say, for me, one of the godsends during this period that helped me get through it was the fact that the forest preserve stayed open and that I could keep going out. And I mean, I know that there were, the nature center, Crabtree, I go to Crabtree a lot too, and that one was closed and it has reopened. And there were some signs up about keeping our distance, but otherwise, I mean, I would have felt trapped if I hadn't had the forest preserves available to me. I was just really grateful to have them.
Thank you for that. We have time for maybe
Thank
one
you.
more
Yeah,
question.
It is amazing that they stayed open.
Oh.
Yep. Sure. Yeah, it is amazing they stayed open. The staff really did some heroic work to make sure the preserve stayed open. And, we know that the Park District, a lot of that was closed, if not all of it, in Chicago. The lakefront just barely reopened. So the preserves have seen a tremendous upturn in attendance over the past year. So there's a question here about where are your favorite areas to shoot in the South and Western forest preserves? And then a second one, this is sort of your A/B option. What's your favorite subject to photograph in nature?
And I'm going to suggest we do this a little bit like Spitfire, like name your region or name your subject, because we've got a whole nother slideshow ahead of us. Gary?
I would say the northwest area of the forest preserves and animal life, particularly as they look at me as they take the picture.
Patrick?
I think the Wolf Road Prairie in September, it's like when everything turns gold, it's like you step into a painting or something. And I think that's probably my favorite.
I really like photographing birds because they're just so beautiful and colorful, and there's so many different kinds of them.
I second the vote for birds, and I love Deer Grove. I live almost within walking distance, but last year I discovered Skokie Lagoons, which is awesome. Really, really like that preserve.
Michelle?
In terms of subject area, mushrooms and the little, if you look at vines, little tiny curves in those are really fun to see because it's just really magical looking.
Yeah, Caitlin?
I would also second birds now that I'm thinking about it, especially in terms of like migrating birds in the springtime. The Midwest is like an amazing place to see all the migrating birds coming through, and you can see some really amazing birds that are like bright red, like the scarlet tanager, and they're just so cool.
Yeah, anybody else want to jump in? All right. Well, if there are no final questions and no final comments, then we have teased everyone with announcing the winners of the 12th annual photo contest. And really excited to have this venue to announce the winners. We've never announced the winners like this, so it's completely new. I just want to say a couple things about this year's contest. We added a best youth photographer category. Every year we have various best of categories. They do change a little bit each year depending on the photos that are submitted, but some of the common ones are best flora, best fauna, best people in the preserves, best landscape. And so we had noticed an uptick in youth photography this past year. I think a lot of people were looking for ways to get their kids out of the house and get out of the house, you know, in general with their kids that were home from school. I think there's just a lot more knowledge about photography, and we talked about the ease of taking photos with one's phone. And so a lot of young people have phones and they go out and they're taking photos themselves. So so we thought, why not? Let's try it. Well, we got nearly 80 submissions and the quality was very high. And we thought we'd choose one, and we chose 3 to be some as you know, winners in this contest. So really, really proud of the youth who submitted photos, and we will continue this next year. So this is a new category. It's for people who are 18 years or younger. So that's one new thing. The other slight change is that we had been using the term runner up for one of the, you know, for anywhere from 6 to 8 photos that we chose that we really loved, but just hadn't quite matched the quality of the best of category, but still stunning photos. We just thought that honorable mention was a slightly better term, so you'll see that in this slideshow. So without further ado, I'm going to once again get the music started, so bear with me while I do some adjusting.
I've been dreaming, friendly faces. I've got so much time to kill. Just imagine people laughing. I know someday we will. And even if it's far away, get me through another day. Cover me in sunshine, shower me with good times. Tell me that the world's been spinning since the beginning, and everything will be alright. Cover me in sunshine. From a distance, all these mountains are wildflowers, they keep living high. Oh, they're just there until I've been missing yesterday. But what if there's a better place? Cover me in sunshine, shower me with good times. Tell me that the world's been spinning since the beginning, and everything will be alright. Cover me in sunshine, shower me with good times. Tell me that the world's been spinning since the beginning, and everything will be alright. Cover me in sunshine. La la cover me in sunshine, shower me with good times. Tell me that the world's been spinning since the beginning, and everything will be alright. Cover me in sunshine.
Can't believe that Daniel deal you got me on my insurance. Daniel, State Farm offers surprisingly great rates to everyone. Sure you do. You want to meet the Queen? I'm not dressed for that.
Give me 1 second to bring it back online. All right. So huge, huge thank you to everyone who submitted photos this year and every year. We, of course, are accepting submissions for the 2021 13th Annual Photo Contest. So here are just a few things for you to consider if you'd like to submit a photo. FOTFP.org/photo-contest, or just go to FOTFP.org and you will find the webpage for our photo contest. There's a full list of rules. I'd advise browsing through previous winners, just see what's been taken. It'll help you think of maybe some unique pictures that we don't already have, but also give you an idea of the types of things we are looking for. And then we cannot accept any photos that feature non-native plants. So if you need help identifying what those non-native plants are, if you have a picture and you think maybe something isn't native, send it to us and we'll be happy to let you know if there's if a non-native species is featured in the photo. Also, please encourage any young people in your life, 18 years or younger, to submit. And we always need photos of people. So if you have a great photo of a person in the preserves, relaxing, learning, just volunteering, doing anything in the preserves, we'd love to see that. I am also going to put up our contact information. Please visit us online, FOTFP.org. You can email Benjamin, you can email myself, you can email Peter. Peter's our senior field organizer, so especially if you're interested in volunteering. As some folks said, many of our photographers are also volunteers, and so it is a wonderful way to experience the forest preserves. It's a wonderful way to learn how to capture photos of the forest preserves, and it's just a wonderful way to help the forest preserves. So if you're interested in volunteering, please contact Peter. Otherwise, you can find all of our information, all of our contact information on the website. And I'm gonna throw it back to Benjamin and Peter, see if they have any final thoughts.
Peter, why don't you give a little encouragement for volunteering?
Yeah, absolutely. And a quick hello to, I've noticed quite a few volunteers' names in the attendees section. We've got quite a few volunteers among our panelists too. So I think it's been stated, but it's really an amazing way to get to know the preserves and to get to know the flora and fauna and the people that use them really intimately. So I can't imagine a better way to get familiar with the preserves and to practice photography. So if anyone has any questions about where to volunteer, how to find more, how to find out more about the preserves nearest to you, definitely don't hesitate to reach out. That's my email there. I'd love to connect you to the forest preserve closest to you and the closest stewardship group that's actively volunteering. And thank you again for all of the contest submissions, some really amazing photos, and thank you again to all of our panelists.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And, you know, our Friends is all about the people that make up our community. We have over 2,000 members, thousands of volunteers, again, board members, and, you know, a handful of staff that really try and keep this organization going. And we're happy to say we have a very good relationship with the forest preserves, that we work together with them very closely. We're also happy to sort of, you know, be a little bit of an advocate group if we need to. They expect it from us to even ask us to do that sometimes to help them out. And so, you know, however you might want to be involved, you know, please reach out to us and you know, let us know. We're happy to engage you and help you connect with the preserves, and most importantly, help you help others do that. If the preserves are not loved and used, they would easily go away. And I believe that. So each and every one of us in our own way can be an advocate for the forest preserves and for nature. Thank you so much.
And with that, thanks for being part of history. This was our first ever virtual photo exhibit. So thank you. And thanks to our panelists. Have a wonderful night. And I hope to see lots of photos flooding my inbox tomorrow. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.